The Panther tank weighs 45 tons. Its frontal armor is 80 millimeters thick. Its 75 millimeter gun can penetrate any Allied tank at ranges exceeding 2,000 yards. In September 1944, 6 of these machines are rolling through dense morning fog somewhere. In eastern France, completely blind, engines roaring, commanders scanning for targets they cannot see. 30 feet ahead, invisible in the mist, a 5-man crew sits behind a gun weighing less than 1 ton with armor protection measured not in inches, but in hope. The gun cannot penetrate a Panther from the front at any range. Every manual says this crew should retreat. Every training officer says this is suicide. They don't move. What happens in the next 4 minutes will contradict everything armored. Warfare doctrine teaches about firepower, protection, and probability. It will prove that sometimes the smallest weapon in the right hands at the right moment can defeat the most powerful machine on earth. And if you stay until the end, you'll understand why this single engagement changed, how armies thought about anti-tank defense for the rest of the war. This is the story of the moment. Courage met geometry on a fog-bound road, and neither side could see what was coming. September 1944. The war in Europe has been raging for 5 years. American and British forces have broken out of Normandy, swept across France, and now they're pushing toward the German frontier. The Lorraine region, rolling farmland broken by tangled woods, streams running north, villages fortified over centuries, becomes the killing ground where Germany will make its stand. But Germany isn't finished. In the forests and fields of Lorraine, elite panzer brigades are massing for a counter-offensive designed to cut Allied supply lines and throw the invaders back to the coast. The weapons standing between these Panthers and disaster is the 57mm anti-tank gun. The Americans call it the M1. The British call it the 6-pounder. Frontline troops call it inadequate. The numbers tell a brutal story. The gun fires a shell weighing just over 6 pounds. Maximum effective range, 1,700 yards. Penetration capability. Against armor, roughly 2 inches at 100 yards with standard ammunition. The Panther's frontal armor, 5.5 inches of hardened steel sloped at 55 degrees, effectively doubling its resistance. Do the math. The 57mm cannot hurt a Panther from the front. Period. But it has 2 advantages. First, it's small. Light enough that a crew can push it by hand, hide it in a hedgerow, tuck it behind a stone wall, position it where heavier guns can never go. The gun weighs just 2,600 pounds. You can tow it with a jeep. Deploy it in minutes, conceal it in terrain that would never hide a 3-inch or 90mm gun. Second, it's fast. Rate of fire in good conditions, 15 rounds per minute. Trained crews can load, aim, and fire in 4 seconds. Speed, concealment, positioning dot against 45 tons of German steel. These 3 things will have to be enough. The crews know it. Training doctrine drills this into them. You will not win stand-up fights against heavy armor. You will ambush. You will wait for side shots. You will fire, displace, and survive to fight again. The entire anti-tank warfare philosophy, by late 1944, revolves around one principle. Never let the enemy dictate the terms of engagement. But what happens when fog forces both sides into point-blank range and no one can dictate anything? The Lorraine campaign opens in early September with clear skies and optimism. By mid-September, the weather collapses. Rain, constant, cold, miserable rain that turns dirt roads into rivers of mud and slows every vehicle to a crawl. Then the temperatures drop. Overnight lows near freezing. Moisture rising from saturated ground meets cold air and creates fog so thick it swallows entire divisions. On the morning of September 29th, 1944, visibility drops to 30 feet across multiple sectors. Soldiers literally cannot see their hands at arm's length in some areas. For mechanized units, this is paralysis. Tanks can't advance without risk of driving into ditches, minefields, or friendly positions. Aircraft are grounded. Artillery observers can't spot targets. Command and control breaks down because radio communication becomes the only link between units. And radio discipline collapses into chaos as everyone reports contact with unseen enemies. For the Germans, the fog is both a curse and a gift. There, Panther tanks equipped with powerful long-range guns lose their primary tactical advantage when visibility drops to spitting distance. But the fog also screens their movements, allowing panzer columns to approach Allied positions undetected. It's a gamble. Move aggressively through the fog and you might achieve surprise. Or you might drive blind into an ambush and die before you know what hit you. For anti-tank gun crews, the fog is an equalizer. If the Panthers can't see you, they can't kill you from a mile away. If they stumble into you at point-blank range, suddenly your inadequate gun matters, but only if you hold your nerve and wait for the perfect shot instead of panicking and firing too soon. The crew we're following understands this. They've been trained for exactly this scenario ambush tactics. Firing discipline, rapid engagement at close range. But training and reality are different things. Training doesn't prepare you for the sound of 6 Panther engines growing louder in fog. So thick you can't see your own gun barrel. The gun is positioned on a narrow road flanked by drainage ditches and dense hedgerows. This isn't accidental. Anti-tank doctrine emphasizes terrain selection. Find positions that channel enemy armor into kill zones where maneuverability is restricted. This road is perfect. Too narrow for tanks to maneuver laterally. Ditches on both sides prevent evasive action. Hedgerows provide concealment for the gun crew. The 57mm gun is camouflaged with branches and mud, positioned at a slight angle to the road, giving them a clean line of fire down the approach without exposing themselves to frontal return fire. The crew has cut firing lanes through the hedgerow, narrow gaps that allow the gun to traverse and engage targets while remaining concealed. They've pre-ranged key points along the road, the bend 50 yards north, the intersection 100 yards south, the stone marker at 75 yards. In good visibility, this preparation would allow them to engage targets with minimal adjustment. In this fog, those reference points are invisible, and they'll be firing at shapes emerging from mist, at ranges measured in feet, not yards. They've been here since midnight, ordered to hold this position no matter what comes down that road. Infantry from nearby units are pulled back to secondary positions. Tank destroyers have repositioned to cover other approaches. Command knows German. Armor is moving in this sector, but no one knows where or when they'll strike. Intelligence reports mention Panther tanks, Panzer, IVs, possibly even Tigers. The crew commander has briefed his men. If heavy armor comes, wait for side shots. Front shots are suicide against Panthers. The crew commander is a sergeant, 23 years old. He's fought in North Africa, seen 2-pounder guns shatter uselessly against Tiger armor in Tunisia, watched friends die when their guns couldn't stop German tanks. He knows exactly what a Panther can do. He also knows that on this fog-shrouded road, normal rules don't apply. His orders are clear: hold this road. No retreat without direct orders. His gunner is 21. Farm kid from Iowa. Steady hands. Excellent eyesight, though in this fog that advantage means nothing. The loader is 19, barely old enough to vote, but he's trained to the point where loading the gun is muscle memory. Grab, ram, close the breech, tap the gunner's shoulder for seconds flat, even under fire. The other 2 crewmen handle ammunition, resupply, and security, watching the flanks for German infantry that might try to overrun the position. 5 men, 1 gun. No illusions about what happens if this goes wrong. Then they hear the Panthers. The sound comes from the fog-like distant thunder. Engines, multiple engines, big ones, the deep growl of Maybach V12s that power Germany's heaviest tanks. The crew freezes. Distance is impossible to judge in this soup. Could be 200 yards, could be 50. The sergeant raises his fist. Silence. No movement. The gun is already loaded with armor-piercing ammunition, but against a Panther's frontal armor, it might as well be a training round. Their only chance is a side shot. Flank armor on a Panther is 40 to 50 millimeters vulnerable to 57 millimeter. Fire at close range. The engine noise grows louder. Now they hear treads. The metallic grinding of steel tracks on gravel, that distinctive sound every soldier learns to recognize and fear. Multiple vehicles, moving slowly, cautiously, feeling their way through the fog. The Germans know they're blind. They know American guns could be anywhere. But they're moving anyway, because orders are orders, and the counteroffensive doesn't wait for good visibility. The gunner is tracking sound, swiveling the barrel slightly left as the noise shifts position. His eyes press to the sight, seeing nothing but white fog and the ghost outlines of the hedgerow. His hand rests on the firing lever. 1 squeeze. That's all it takes. But the sergeant's hand is on his shoulder, the signal to wait. Seconds stretch. The engine noise is overwhelming now. Maybe 50 feet away, maybe closer. The loader has a fresh round ready, holding it against his chest, waiting for the command to reload after the first shot. The other crew members have their rifles up, scanning the fog for infantry escorts that sometimes accompany German armor. Then the first shape materializes, 30 feet away. A massive dark silhouette emerging from white mist like a whale surfacing from deep water. The unmistakable profile of a Panther Osprey, Geetha long 75mm gun, the sloped frontal armor, the massive bulk that makes German tanks look like toys. 45 tons of tank, main gun elevated slightly, commander's hatch closed, moving at walking speed. Blind and vulnerable and deadly all at once. The sergeant doesn't breathe. If they fire now, they'll hit frontal armor. The shell will bounce. The Panther will know exactly where they are and will fire back point blank. 175mm high explosive shell will kill everyone in this crew. The blast alone would shred them, never mind the shrapnel. So he waits. His hand tightens on the gunner's shoulder. The gunner's finger hovers over the firing lever. The Panther crawls forward 5 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet. It's massive. Close enough to see weld seams on the armor. Close enough to hear voices inside the tank-muffled German shouting, the commander trying to navigate through fog. 20 feet. The Panther is passing their position now. Broadside, the vulnerable. Side armor exposed. This is the shot. This is the moment every training manual describes: flank engagement, minimal range, perfect geometry. But here's the nightmare. Behind it, through the fog, more shapes. The second Panther is less than 20 feet behind the first. Then a third. Then a fourth. This isn't a patrol. It's a column. 6 tanks moving in convoy down this single narrow road, blind but deadly, searching for the American lines they know are somewhere ahead. The sergeant's mind races. Fire now, and they killed the lead tank. And then 5 Panthers will know exactly where the gun is positioned. 5 tanks will swivel their turrets and saturate this position with high explosive rounds until nothing moves. But if they hold fire, 6 Panthers pass through their lines unchallenged and attack the infantry and supply units 2 miles behind them, units with no anti-tank weapons, no protection, nothing but rifles against 45-ton tanks. What do you do? Take the shot and probably die. Or hold fire and let 6 Panthers massacre everyone behind you. There's no good answer. There's only the answer you can live with, assuming you survive the next 60 seconds. The sergeant makes his choice. He taps the gunner's shoulder twice. The signal to fire. The 57mm gun roars. The armor-piercing shell crosses 30 feet in a fraction of a second and punches through the lead Panther's side armor just behind the turret ring. The penetration is catastrophic. Inside the tank, the shell tears through hydraulic lines, electrical systems, ammunition, storage, and crew compartment before either detonating stored rounds or igniting fuel. The result is the same. The Panther lurches to a stop. Smoke begins pouring from hatches. Flames erupt from the engine deck. The crew bails. Out into the fog, scrambling away from their dying machine, hands over their heads, uniforms smoking. 4 seconds. The loader slams another round into the breech with practiced violence, rams it home, closes the mechanism, taps the gunner's shoulder. The gunner is already tracking right, searching through the sight for the second Panther, which is now visible. At 35 feet, stopped behind the burning lead tank. Commander's hatch opening as the tank commander tries to see what's happening. The fog is chaos now. German tankers are shouting. Engines are revving. Commanders are screaming into intercoms, trying to figure out where the shot came from, what direction, how many guns. The second Panther appears through the smoke, trying to angle left to bypass the burning lead tank, exposing its flank as it maneuvers in the narrow road. The gunner fires. Another sight penetration at point-blank range. Another catastrophic hit. This one explodes a munition detonation. The turret lifts 3 inches and slams back down. Hatches blown open, flames roaring from every opening. 2 Panthers destroyed in 8 seconds. 12 shots remaining in the immediate ammunition supply, but now the Germans know where the gun is. The third Panther's turret is traversing, slow, hand cranked, because the hydraulic traverse motor can't react fast enough. The commander screaming directions through the intercom, trying to guide. The gunner onto target. The 75mm main gun is swinging toward the anti-tank crew's position. If that gun fires, the crew dies. Explosive shell at 40 feet. They won't even have time to feel it. The loader is already ramming the third shell home. Hands moving faster than thought. Muscle memory taking over. The gunner doesn't wait for the tap signal. He fires the instant the breech closes. The shell hits the third Panther on the front drive sprocket, smashing the track assembly and road wheels, immobilizing the tank. The vehicle can't move, but the gun is still operational and still traversing toward them. The gunner is already adjusting, loading again, firing a second shot that punches through the turret side just as the German gunner finds his target. The Panther's gun fires, but the barrel is 3 degrees off. The shell screams past the American position and detonates in the hedgerow 20 feet behind them, showering the crew with dirt and branches. 16 seconds. 3 Panthers engaged, 2 destroyed, 1 crippled. The 4th Panther is reversing, driver panicking, trying to back out of the kill zone. But the narrow road and drainage ditches prevent evasive maneuvering, and the tank is moving in a straight line, directly away from the gun. Perfect target. The gun crew has them trapped. The 4th shell is loaded. The gunner fires at the reversing tank's exposed rear engine deck. Hit. Fire erupts from the engine compartment. Ammunition detonation follows seconds later. The Panther's turret lifts 3 feet off the hull and crashes back down at a 45-degree angle. Smoke and flame pouring from the crew hatches. The 5th and 6th Panthers are desperate now, crews knowing. They're in a kill zone but unable to see the threat, unable to maneuver, unable to do anything except die or flee. One attempts to push forward, trying to shove the disabled lead tanks out of the way using brute force. Engines screaming at maximum RPM. The other tries to turn, attempting to bring its frontal armor to face the threat, but the narrow road makes this almost impossible. The tank angles right, tracks slipping on wet gravel, side armor exposed for 3 critical seconds. Both tanks are moving. Both are vulnerable, and the gun crew is firing as fast as the loader can work. 5th Panther. Side hit just below the turret ring. Penetration, engine fire. Crew evacuates through top hatches, dropping into the fog and running. 6th Panther. Track hit. Immobilized. Second shot through turret side. Internal fire. Crew abandons vehicle. 4 minutes from first shot to last. 6 Panthers. 5 destroyed outright. 1 crippled and abandoned. 18 rounds fired. 16 hits. The anti-tank crew is deaf from muzzle blast, covered in propellant residue. Hands burn from hot shell casings and the barrel is glowing dull red from sustained fire. The sergeant is screaming at them to relocate, to displace immediately before German artillery finds their position or German infantry counterattacks. They're already hooking the gun to its jeep tow vehicle, preparing to move to the secondary position 300 yards south. But they held. 5 men with a gun that couldn't stop a Panther, just destroyed 6 of them in the time it takes to brew coffee. Let's talk about what just happened, because it contradicts every technical specification, every armored engagement table, every lesson from tank warfare doctrine written before this moment. On paper, this engagement should have been impossible. The 57mm gun's armor-piercing round cannot penetrate Panther frontal armor under any circumstances. At extended ranges, it struggles even against side armor. Tank crews across multiple theaters called this gun inadequate, obsolete, stopgap weapon waiting for replacement by 76mm or 90mm guns that could actually hurt heavy German armor. But here's what the specifications don't measure: geometry, positioning, visibility, crew discipline, and the human factor. The fog eliminated the Panther's primary advantage standoff range. Unable to engage from 2,000 yards where their superior guns and armor dominate. Forced into point-blank encounters where a jeep-mounted recoilless rifle could hurt them. The Panthers became vulnerable to weapons they normally outclassed. The narrow road eliminated mobility, preventing the evasive maneuvers that might have exposed the anti-tank crew or allowed the Panthers to withdraw and regroup. The crew's positioning angled to the road, camouflaged perfectly, holding fire until geometry favored them meant they fired first with perfect target angles and in armored combat. The first accurate shot often decides everything, and the crew's disciplined holding fire until the perfect moment, despite watching a 45-ton tank pass within spitting distance. Despite every instinct screaming to shoot now before it's too late, created a situation where technical superiority became irrelevant. This is the lesson that anti-tank instructors taught for the rest of the war and into the Cold War. A small gun in the right position at the right moment, operated by a crew that doesn't panic, can defeat any tank on Earth. It's not about caliber or armor penetration tables. It's about using terrain, weather, concealment, and timing to create fleeting windows where the math changes and the supposedly inferior weapon wins. But it requires nerve, the kind of nerve that lets you watch 6 Panthers roll past your position in the fog and wait for the perfect shot instead of firing from panic or fear. Could you do that? Could you hold your fire with 45 tons of German armor 30 feet away, knowing that if you fire too soon, you die, and if you don't fire at all, everyone behind you dies? Think about that for a second, because dozens of anti-tank crews across the European theater faced exactly that choice in September and October 1944. And their decisions determined whether sectors held or collapsed. This engagement isn't isolated. It's one small piece of a massive armored battle raging across Lorraine throughout late September 1944. The Battle of Arracourt, the largest tank battle on the Western Front between D-Day and the Battle of the Bulges, consuming hundreds of tanks and thousands of lives across a 15-mile front. Germany commits over 260 armored vehicles to this counteroffensive, including the newest and most powerful Panthers straight from the factories. The objective: break through American lines, retake Nancy, cut Third Army's supply routes, and prove that German armor can still win decisive victories even with Allied air superiority. It's ambitious, it's desperate, and the weather gives them a fighting chance they shouldn't have. American forces, primarily the 4th Armored Division and supporting tank destroyer battalions, are outnumbered and outgunned. Their German tanks are inferior to Panthers in almost every measurable way. Their 57mm and 76mm guns struggle against German heavy armor. But they have training, they have experience, and they have doctrine that emphasizes ambush tactics, rapid maneuvering, and combined arms coordination. By noon on September 29th, the fog lifts across most sectors. The road where our crew fought becomes visible. 6 Panthers sit motionless and burning, some silent, all abandoned. German recovery teams will attempt to salvage what they can, but this narrow road is now firmly in American hands. And these tanks aren't going anywhere. The 57mm gun crew has displaced 2 miles to the rear, repositioned at a new ambush. Sight, reloaded, and prepared for the next engagement. They don't celebrate. They don't talk about what happened. There's nothing to say. They did their job. 5 men held a position against overwhelming force and won because they understood something that armored warfare manuals struggle to articulate. Numbers on paper matter less than the human beings operating the weapons. This pattern repeats across the battlefield. Small anti-tank gun crews, tank destroyer platoons, and German tank companies engage. Panthers at close range in fog-shrouded terrain and win through superior positioning and crew discipline. By October 1st, German armored strength in the sector collapses. Of the 262 German armored vehicles deployed, only 62 remain operational. American losses: 25 tanks and 7 tank destroyers. The kill ratio more than 10-1 in favor of supposedly inferior American equipment. Shocks German commanders and validates American combined arms doctrine. But the victory isn't about equipment. It's about the crews. We remember the big battles: D-Day, Market Garden, the Bulge. We remember Generals Patton, Montgomery, Rommel, the sweep of armies across continents. We remember iconic weapons: Tiger tanks, Sherman Fireflies, the race to Berlin. We forget the gun crews, the 5 soldiers sitting in mud behind a 1-ton weapon, watching 6 45-ton tanks emerge from fog, knowing the math says they should die in the next 60 seconds. We forget the loaders' burned hands from hot shell casings, the blisters that form after firing 18 rounds in 4 minutes. We forget the gunner's split-second target acquisition, the difference between hitting side armor at the turret ring where penetration causes catastrophic internal damage and hitting the front glacis where the shell bounces harmlessly away. We forget the sergeant's decision to hold fire for 5 impossible seconds while a Panther passed close enough to touch. But every major armored engagement came down to dozens of these small moments. Moments where individual crews with inadequate weapons faced overwhelming force and either held or broke. The ones who held who understood their weapons' limitations, exploited enemy vulnerabilities, used terrain and weather to their advantage. Those crews stopped offensives, held critical sectors, and bought time for reserves to arrive. The 57mm gun was obsolete by 1945, replaced by heavier weapons, phased out of frontline service, relegated to secondary units and training depots. But in the fog-shrouded fields of France in September 1944, operated by crews who refused to panic, this inadequate weapon destroyed some of the most feared tanks Germany ever built, not because the gun was powerful, because the crews were disciplined, not because the math favored them, because they understood how to change the math, not because they were fearless, because they were terrified and fought anyway. 6 Panthers emerged from fog on a narrow road. A 1-inch gun crew waited calmly. 4 minutes later, 6 Panthers were destroyed or abandoned. And 5 soldiers who couldn't stop a Panther proved that everything armored warfare doctrine teaches about firepower and protection is secondary to the quality of the crew behind the weapon. If this story moved you, there are hundreds more. Like it, forgotten engagements with small units with inadequate equipment defeated overwhelming force through discipline, positioning, and raw courage. Subscribe to this channel because these stories deserve to be told. Hit the like button if this changed how you think about what actually wins battles. And drop a comment. Would you have held fire watching those Panthers roll past at 30 feet? Or would you have fired too soon? Because that decision, 5 seconds of nerve under impossible, pressure separated the crews who survived from the crews who didn't. The fog has lifted. The tanks are silent. But the lesson remains. People, not. Weapons win battles. Never forget that.